So again, I'm Andrew King, the editor-in-chief of Canadian Musician. Thank you for joining us for planning a surefire release strategy. We've got Darryl Hurs from CD Baby and Indie Week joining us for this one with some proven tips that whether you're releasing a single, an EP, a full record, are going to help you maximize your impact with your music and help grow your audience. So thank you for joining us. As I mentioned, most recently, Darryl was appointed as the Director of Market Development for Canada for the ubiquitous CD Baby. He's been in the business for well over 2 decades. He's also the CEO and owner of Indie Week, Canada and UK. Just wrapped up a very successful edition in November 2019. So kudos to Darryl and his team for that. And yeah, we're going to roll through here. A quick overview of what we're going to be covering. First off, we're going to talk with just a short little case study about Liam Gallagher, formerly of Oasis. He put out an LP earlier this year and kind of had a model release strategy with some tips that you're going to be able to borrow and build on in your own career. And Darryl will help set that up for us. And we're going to talk about the whole goal of releasing music and how that helps to promote and draw attention to your live shows and other things going on in your ecosystem. We're going to talk about timelines, how well in advance you need to be planning, what you need to be getting in place in terms of assets, content, etc. We're going to talk about what types of content you want to share to roll out your music. Using some of the tools available to you to plan and track your success. So here we go. Darryl, thrilled to have you joining us here. Before we jump into talking about Liam's release for Why Me, Why Not, and some of the examples that he's got there that you think people should be following, what is it that intrigued you about this topic of planning a successful release strategy that made you first want to write about it for Canadian Musician and now join us for this session?
Okay. Well, first, thanks for having me. I really thought this topic is really relevant right now because since joining CD Baby, I've had a lot of artists hit me up, something like, "I'm in the studio right now. I should have a single mastered by tomorrow. Can I get this out by next Tuesday?" And thinking about it, there's like zero marketing time, zero lead up time. Like, what audience are they actually releasing to? And I think people are trying to jump steps. Playlists are a big thing right now, and so everybody's just like, if I could just get it out and on a playlist, then I'm on my way. I think more long term, and we'll talk about the digital, but then at the end, I've got a little piece I'll talk about the live that'll help, and I've actually got an extra little surprise at the very end for everybody who makes it through to the end. So there we go.
Awesome. Thank you for plugging that. Yeah, we're going to give you some tips on how to make your show surrounding your album release a big success. But yeah, let's start with Liam here. So the LP earlier this year was Why Me, Why Not? And just got a breakdown of some of the different things that Liam and his team were doing to roll this out. So obviously we're starting here with a designated hashtag for the album title, pretty self-explanatory. But yeah, Darryl, walk us through this. Like, put out 4 different singles, a bunch of videos. Tell us a bit about like the timeline here, how this was all scheduled, and ultimately why you thought it was an effective strategy.
Well, first off, I teach 1 day a week at Hurs, and students are younger. Of course, I was around when the Oasis band was around, so I know who Liam is. And I would go in and ask, "Do you guys know who Liam Gallagher is?" And they'd be like, "No, not at all," which was interesting. But I watched him online, and it was about 6 months before the release that he started promoting a hashtag, "Why Me, Why Not?" And it raised curiosity, what people asking what that's about, which led to that's going to be the name of my next album. His single comes out. He starts doing a few interviews, and a lot of the questions are about why the title, why me, not why not, because people have seen the hashtag and are wondering what it's about. So building a bit of curiosity, which leads into interviews, which leads into video. He pretty much timed them, I think, about 8 weeks apart for the videos. He only did a couple live shows in between, not too many, and he wouldn't play any new material. maybe one new song, but that's it. And he's really ramping up to that release so that everybody's on board when it comes out. Now, social media is this whole new outlet, and the thing about it is the farther ahead of the game you can start marketing, the better. I think we had a previous discussion earlier. One thing that's really interesting right now is Motley Crue's announcing that they're coming back, and they're already promoting for next summer. So you got to think 6 months out if you really want a successful release. So that's the biggest thing, is give yourself a lot of time, right? So I think that covers the most of these points. But the one thing to think about is, prior to everything, post working in the studio, then have like a photo, then maybe a short video clip, all these little teasers leading up to an announcement. And one of the things I'll see is, we're in the studio right now, our new album's going to be out next June, and it's going to be 8 songs, and they talk about everything all at once instead of spreading out over time. So I see that as a big mistake in this day and age. Social media people their attention spans are less. They are surfing around and clicking and all that stuff. So you need more content out there so that you have a better chance of even being seen and shared and liked. Okay?
So yeah, the whole idea is, do not put out music unless you're doing it to promote something else. Now, obviously, there are some exceptions to this rule. If you're a SoundCloud producer and just want to be sharing music into the ether with no set agenda or goals for longevity, that's one thing. But if you're looking to build a career in music, where, as we know right now, I hate to say it, but in a lot of cases, music is kind of the loss leader to other aspects of your career, merch, tour sales, sync placements, etc. So yeah, this is Darryl's concept. I'll let him hammer it home, but his message is basically, don't put out a release, whether it's a record, an EP, even a single song, unless you've got a tour or show to promote. Why is that? And are there other initiatives that maybe we haven't touched on beyond live shows that music could be helping you promote and get out there?
So to maximize efforts, it takes so much work to put in to launch a release, but also to do a tour. You might as well use these tools to market each other, right? And if you're releasing music, you should be kind of tying in, announcing ticket sales at the same time. If you're getting a surge of people listening, watching, start talking about ticket sales, right? And a lot of what people are doing, this is what Liam Gallagher did, is he released 2 singles, then announced that there's a tour coming up, announced that pre-sale tickets are going to go on sale, then tickets are going on sale, then released another single, right? And then another single after that. And all during that time, while they're promoting these singles, they're promoting ticket sales. And it's making people want to hear this new music live, because you haven't played it before. It promotes the ticket sales, right? And as people are promoting, there's promoters out there promoting the shows, that also leads back to the music. Should we talk assets now, or take a couple questions?
Talk assets, and then we'll take some questions.
Perfect. Okay, so I try to use metaphors when I'm teaching to, break it down so that it kind of makes sense. And I use the restaurant Subway as an example, right? So you go to Subway, there's a basic recipe for a sub, but you can customize it any way you want. But you can only customize it because everything is chopped and ready to go. Can you imagine if you went there and you said, yeah, I want pickles on the sub, and it's not chopped, and they say, hold on, wait, I got to go in the back and take care of it. And if they did that for every single ingredient you asked to put on there, it would take forever to do one thing. So another thing about this is, I really look at artists having a 12-month plan. And if you could have 6 months to figure out what you're going to do, and before you're releasing, before you're doing anything, and you get all your photos ready, video clips ready, you make sure you do the professional photo shoots, your image, I talked briefly about Sumo Psycho, and if you look at everything they've done, they've got all those assets ready to go. And then when they're on tour, they're actually releasing more and more updates because it's already there. Kovic does the same thing. He actually does a full live, like he does a full video, edited professionally and everything after every single show of the tour, so that his fans that were at that show have more things to share, like, and comment about. So building assets is huge prior to execution. And prior to execution, you need to have a plan. So talking to some of these artists, they're like, one artist said he had a 24-month plan and had every video clip scheduled in the calendar so that he knew when the execution is going to take place. That's a little extreme, but I would say 6 to 12 months out, you should already have it all planned out.
Okay. So as far as those different, I love the Subway metaphor. In terms of those different ingredients you want to have at the ready and ready to disseminate when the time comes, maybe when the opportunity presents itself. So obviously we're talking about Facebook Live or Twitch or like a live stream video. That's pretty self-explanatory, and sure, you can prepare for it, but it's an in the moment thing. Yeah. Specifically, what are some of these assets we're talking about that people should be designing, commissioning, however they want to get it done? But, you know, things that you want to have at the ready as part of your release package.
Well, it's almost like, think about let's talk about one single, right? The first thing is just doing organic kind of posts, but you can pre-schedule it using a program called Hootsuite. Right. And often I'll use like a spreadsheet, which works with Hootsuite. So that means you kind of build a template. So what we're doing for this one single release, we'll kind of do the same timing for the next single release. So if you've got that calendar sort of laid out in a spreadsheet, it's a template for every release. So it's kind of like six months out, we talk about we're writing a song. Halfway there, we start, or 2 weeks after, we start posting a photo in the studio. 2 weeks after that, we post a video clip in the studio. After that, we do a live video chat, just talking about we're in the studio right now. We're looking to share stuff. We're going to have an announcement. And the other thing, too, that's different these days is you have an announcement of an announcement. So instead of saying tickets on sale, you say we have an announcement next Tuesday. On Tuesday, you say, we're going on tour. We're going to announce tickets on Friday. On Friday, you say we have pre-sale tickets next Tuesday, and you put a video in between and photos in between. And then when the pre-sale tickets are on sale, then you announce when the full tickets are on sale. So one thing is leading into another, into another, into another, as opposed to we're playing a show 3 months from now. Tickets are on sale today. Videos out today, singles out today. A lot of people try to do everything in one shot, where instead it's one leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. So announce to an announce. And having a spreadsheet allows you to plan out exactly what days you're going to do that. And once you've got that sort of laid out and figure out what works for you, that becomes a template to use for every single release. And that starts telling you what assets you need. And it'll be a little bit custom based on your audience, your style. Is it hard rock? Is it acoustic? Is it folk? Is it classical? So you have to know your audience as to what really sends the message to them that they will resonate with the most.
Yeah, and actually that is very similar to the other question of Cherie, is like, if you're just starting out and want to release, like, where do you start? If, you know, we're talking about sending out content and engaging your audience, but kind of chicken to egg here, like, at what point, I guess we got to kind of start out with the audience building process in a sense. And so for John's question too, it's like, yeah, if you've got a day job and are just looking to get the ball rolling on a career, you know, not everyone can just jump in with both feet and dedicate all of their time and resources to this. So yeah, any types of strategy on that side, like if you're still kind of in the early stages, so that, you know, you can do this, borrow these concepts, but, you know, you're not paying a pro photographer and graphic designer and getting all these assets together that are going to be going out to a dozen people.
Yeah, well, there's so many tools online. I just put in the chat about Hootsuite.
Hmm.
Like Hootsuite literally lets you put it together a spreadsheet of posts. Basically, the first column you put the date and the time. The second column you put in the message, and that includes hashtags. And if a link's going to be associated to it, you put it in the third column.
Hmm.
And you can literally schedule a month in like an hour by using it. You know, it's simple things like big things coming. That's a post. Look for next week to be an announcement. That's going to be another post. And you can schedule this. And Hootsuite's a great program. They've changed their pricing plans, I believe. Like there is a 30-day free trial, but I believe you got to pay for the basic one. There's a lot of other programs like it, but it allows you to have your time back, you know. And I did a test once. I literally looked up 50 best motivational quotes to use on social media. I grabbed all 50, dumped it into the spreadsheet, allocated the exact same time. I think it was 8:33 a.m. every single day, and I had 50 days programmed, and it took 5 minutes.
Huh.
So, so there's tools out there that, like, it looks like you're on social, but you're not. A program's putting it out there. So, and then you can fill in the gaps. Like if I'm doing motivational quote at 8:30 a.m. every day, I could then send out a message saying follow me on a different account at 1 p.m. every day. I could have it post a photo at 3 p.m. every day. And those are, like, I call that buffer content, where
Hmm.
it's just going out so that at least something's going out when I'm not doing it manually myself. And then that starts helping build audience. And then you start doing the engaging part while the buffer stuff is just cranking out all the time.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, Hootsuite's a great tool for that. We use Later internally.
Yep.
Let's see here. So, got some really good questions coming in that I'll kind of complement one another. We can just keep rolling here.
Right.
Holly's kind of interesting. Like, as an artist working on 4 singles and then the package.
Yeah, that's really common these days too. And that's
Exactly.
exactly what Liam Gallagher did, is by
Bingo.
releasing 4 singles before the album came out.
Okay. So then is there, in that sense, then, like, what's the plan as far as what the public is seeing? Like, is the goal to introduce that concept of an EP at the outset, and with each single kind of maybe have a hashtag for the, well, I guess I'm answering my own question if we're following Liam's example. But like, is there ever a means where it might be strategic to just treat them as 4 isolated singles and then kind of the packaged EP as though it's almost a fifth independent release in a sense?
Exactly. And the other thing about it, you know, talking about content, is when you have a single out, you then do the instrumental version, you do the remix version, you do the acoustic version, you do the live Facebook performance version, all in between the single releases. So you're actually putting out different versions of that same song. So they all become their own, like, pieces of content, right? And if it's on YouTube, then you could use Content ID to help monetize that. And, you know, you'd be surprised that some of the instrumental versions are doing well. Some of the remix versions are doing well. But by putting out that content, you're actually being found by many other options. And in some cases, a rock band may get a hip hop remix or a dance remix. So they're actually catering to other genres outside of their own genre as well. So increasing audience by just having more content that speaks to them. Sometimes artists will do the acoustic versions and prior to the full version, because they don't want to give the full version away. They're kind of leading up to it by doing acoustic, instrumental, teaser, 15 seconds, and live performance, and then the actual video or the single comes out.
Okay. So Holly's follow-up then is, if you're releasing them as individual isolated tracks, is there a risk then that if you then kind of promote the EP altogether once that's done, that you know, people might kind of sneer and just, you know, we've heard this already. But then I guess maybe there's something to it being packaged having individual artwork. I think Protest the Hero did something like that for their Pacific Myth EP that was pretty effective.
Yeah, well, the thing to think about it is if you're going to release an EP, say, of 4 or 5 tracks, 6 tracks, and you just release it all at once, how is each track getting its attention? How are you saying, listen to all of them in a day and age where people barely listen to 30 seconds?
Right.
Right. So that's one thing to think about, is if you release it all at once, one, is the audience built where they're waiting for that release? And two, are they actually going to listen to every single track when it comes out? So I think by releasing it single by single, you're giving that song itself the platform, the spotlight to, you know, build an audience, and that one single possibly leads into the other one, and that's where you're building momentum. I would suggest if it's singles and it's released, it's going up to a full release, I would have additional songs that weren't released yet. So if you release 4 singles, there's potentially 2 to 4 other songs on the full release that are still new.
You know, we talk often about social media, that you don't want to be overly selly or markety, etc. With your content. Like, yeah, what's the tone here in terms of engagement, of the difference between, you know, hey, check out this sweet track, this is for you and you're gonna love it, versus like, please listen, like, and share. You know, the more, you know what I mean, the more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're just constantly saying, listen to me, people will stop listening. That's why some of that content has to look and sound organic. Like, here's a photo of me in the studio, and you're not saying anything other than that. Here's me playing piano in the studio. Glorious Sons, I've seen do that fairly recently, where, you know, they know they're just trying to get it so that, you know, there's new music coming without them saying it. By saying they're in the studio, it's kind of understood new music is coming, but they're not blatantly saying it. But then put in some fun content in between all that kind of stuff, you know. That's an important thing. Behind the scenes videos, past tour videos or past live photos. You know, like, man, I remember when I played the Horseshoe 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. Man, remember that tour that we did in the States a year ago. So, you know, use social themes, like, you know, there's the Throwback Thursday kind of thing, Fallback Friday. So that's the content that you kind of put in between the hard sell messages. You know, it's really important. It's a fine line and it's a balance. You know, and also frequency of posts is important, where you're not posting too much at times. Like, there's times to do a lot and there's a time to hold back a bit. So that's an important one. And if I could use one more metaphor on it, I'm always looking at who's doing the best, and I like to try to follow them. And in film, for instance, Marvel Studios is pretty much doing the best as far as I can see right now. Like, they're making tons of cash on every release. And, you know, earlier this year, they announced 21 film release dates on films they don't even have a cast for, a script, a director. And leading up to then, they'll say, oh, we just announced this person's going to be the director. Right. Oh, this person's doing the script. This person is going to be the lead. Here's a sketch of the costume that it might be. Here they are at a Comic-Con talking. Here's a teaser. Like, it's just so much lead up to these films that they're a guaranteed success by the time they're out.
Yeah, and that's interesting too. Like, you mentioned the costume sketches and everything. Like, you know, sure, there are some staples that we're talking about in the music world, remixes, acoustic versions, live streams, but like, you can get really creative with this stuff, with the content you're rolling out. And like, yeah, that Marvel example, there's just so much fanfare and stuff swirling around in that universe that you can tap into to, you know, one thing complementing the other. Sounds very cool.
Absolutely. I've seen artists where they say, here's 3 pieces of art. Which one do you think should be the artwork for the single? Like, you could definitely be creative when you're leading up to it.
So as far as planning and tracking your success, maybe I'll just tee this one up for you. Facebook Pixel, maybe a Reader's Digest. What is it? how can it be used effectively, and how can it be used effectively specifically for what we're talking about?
Yeah. First off, I'd be interested to know, out of all the people online, if they've heard of the Facebook Pixel. It's something that I've talked to people, and most people I talk to don't know what a Facebook Pixel is. And I believe I just shared an article on my Facebook page earlier today about it. Same kind of thing. So, people talk about advertising on Facebook and seeing ads and all that kind of stuff. But they also talk about it's creepy because you might look at something and then all of a sudden you're getting ads on exactly the topic that you looked at. So Facebook Pixel allows you to be in control of, or be the big brother in the sense. And part of all this lead up strategy is to push people to a website or web page that you have a Facebook Pixel on. So that when you are getting close to the release, you can also start targeting ads to people who've already engaged in your content, which will produce a higher result in return. This is kind of the secret sauce of it all, right? So Facebook Pixel is actually code that you put on your website. Better yet, if it's a landing page. And a landing page is a one-pager that has specific information, no links other than one to something like buy tickets. If there's more links, then they could potentially go somewhere else before they see the button buy tickets or listen to this song or play this video and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So, and while you're leading up to it, it could be simply, hey, read our digest for us being in the studio. And people are interested, they go read it. It's more like a blog post. But every person that goes to it will now be tracked in your Facebook account. So then when you set up ads, you can have it target people who've already gone to your page. And that's powerful.
Yeah.
You can get analytics of like which country, therefore your ads can go to a specific country. You could do demographics, like out of all the people who've gone to my page, I want to target people who live within 20 kilometers of a certain city that like a certain style of music and basically are the ones most likely to buy your music or your tickets. So it's very powerful. And the sooner you get started, the better it is because it'll track everybody that goes to that page, which means your audience will build over time, and if you start doing ads that push people to the page just for the purpose of building an audience, so that when you're going to do an ad about your release, you're actually advertising to these specific groups of people, but you can also segment it down to what their likes, dislikes are, where they live, what concerts they've been to, all that kind of stuff. So that is the secret. And that's why the long lead up really works, because it's all about the advertising when it's all said and done. It's all within Facebook. Basically, you have to have a page. And when you go into the page, you can get into the ad manager and so forth. And there's a menu on the left-hand side at the top where you scroll down and it says Pixel. And most people just ignore it because they have no idea what it is. And that just gives you the code that you put onto the page that you want to track. The second step that's really important is audiences is another category in that menu. And you create an audience and you put in which web address you want to listen to. So wherever your web page is with the pixel on it, you put in the web address and then it'll start listening. And every time anybody hits that page, it'll get their data. And here's what's really crazy, Big Brother stuff. And this is really crazy. A lot of websites have the pixels on it. So how do they know what a person likes? The person that came to your site also has gone to other sites that have a Facebook pixel on it. So they know what they like or don't like outside of just going to your page.
Right.
And if you build up to, I believe the threshold is around 2,000 people in your audience, you then can build what's called a lookalike audience, which is all the people that are exactly like your demographic, but haven't been to your page. So Now you can go outside of your circle and say, hey, I'm going to Chicago and I'm going to build a lookalike audience for that territory that's based on the people that like my music. And so now you can reach out to brand new people without even knowing them. And they're the ones that'll get the ads.
Right. Okay. So obviously a great lead in then to talking about ads specifically. So yeah, we're mentioning here, maybe a lot of folks familiar with Facebook will know your organic growth, especially these days, is minimal, if not non-existent. So yeah, I don't know if we just want to keep it to Facebook. I mean, I know you can sponsor posts on other platforms, but yeah, give us an idea of your approach to advertising on social media,
Sure.
budget, allotments, etc., and what you found to be particularly effective for indie artists.
Yeah, well, okay, I'll give a couple of things to search. First, definitely Google Facebook Pixel, Google how to create an audience, right? This is what Facebook has done, is the minimal organic growth is because they want everybody to do these ads.
Right.
And that's the reality. If you don't do the ads, you're not in the game because everybody's doing the ads and because there's no organic growth. Now, do you have to spend a lot of money? No. The first part about audience building is you want absolutely everybody to go. So that's why you'll see ads and stuff or posts of blog posts that are just curiosity things like, would you believe this? Look at this alligator. And people click it and they go, cool, you're in our audience. We'll hit you up later when we need to. So sometimes you just do curiosity kind of ads or just something that people would just go to because you're not selling anything. It's just information. And you're just trying to get as many people there. And a real interesting thing with Indie Week, we ran an ad. It cost me $382. And the audience that we hit was 1.2 million. So wow. There's ways that I write it at times where I just want people to click or like 1.2, sorry, that was impressions. So I did an ad that was, I just want people to see it, but I don't want them to click it. So there's times where I'll do an ad where I'm just in the sidebar, but it's not selling anything, but I just want to be in their head. Mm-hmm. And if it's a cost per click and they're not clicking, I'm not paying a lot. So I was able to keep costs really down by doing an ad that I'll just appear in sidebars and everywhere, but I'm not trying to sell anything. Nobody will click it, but 1.2 million people saw it. And then knowing I'm going to follow up with an ad that will be wanting people to click. But because people have seen the brand more already, we got a better response on the sales ad or the one we want them to click because they've already got to know the brand.
Oh, very cool.
Right. So there's ways to do it. And like, there's times like you could do like $10 a day, you know, just as long as it's pushed. And a big part to know is Facebook owns Instagram. So when you do an ad on Facebook, it goes to Instagram too. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of hitting two platforms with one ad. And that is very cool. So there's just little strategies because I know, like, you know, we're on a budget. Everybody's on a budget. So figure out how much you're willing to spend and over how much time. And, you know, it could be as cheap as $10 a day. And also the other kind of analytics you get like household incomes. Do they own a car or not? Do they have kids or not? But also you'll start seeing when do people interact. And we found it's funny, like people actually interacted between 12 and 3 a.m. quite a bit with our ads. So you actually get to know when people are online the most that are interacting with your ads. And then you can start taking that data and often to figure out, like, it's a learning curve. It's a huge learning curve. So often what we'll do too is what we call A/B. We'll actually do two ads for the same message, but different headline, a little bit different text, maybe different photo. And we'll try to see which one is performing better before we spend a lot of money into it. So we might say, here's an ad. We're going to put it up to 5% of my audience. And this is another ad. We're going to put it up to 5% or up to 10% of the audience. And out of those two ads, which one performs the most? That's the one that we're going to send to the 80% remaining of the audience. And so we'll probably get a better response because we've already sort of tested it before we send it out.
So a few things to touch on to wrap up. Yeah, a couple of things taken from the column. Start small and build from there, which will feed into Greg's question. And then we basically already mentioned, like within Hootsuite or whatnot, once you've kind of come up with your roadmap for a release, it's something that you can just sort of be plugging in to fresh, like just using it as a template, as a guideline. Obviously, you can and should be tweaking it based on the success of your previous releases and campaigns. And then, but yeah, Darryl, first off, elaborate a bit on start small and build from there and how one might do that. And then just so I don't have to swoop in on you again, before we jump to the question period, you can deliver us with some of those goodies about making sure that your release show is a success, or at least not a total train wreck.
For sure. Okay. Well, start small and build from there. Is the best thing is start. A lot of people are hesitant. And the other thing too is they start, like I've talked to so many people, that, especially people who are throwing money at stuff, and they say, go big or go home. Or, you know, if I spend 30,000 on this, my return should be 60,000. The music business doesn't work that way. And often those people are the ones that go home broke. So it's best to start small and learn as you go and build from what you're learning on. And like, if something doesn't work, don't repeat it, you know, or change it and modify it. The biggest thing is if you have a plan, you then can look at the plan after you've executed and go, what worked? You evaluate it, and you make the tweaks that what worked, what didn't work. And you just keep working on the stuff that works for you, and you just keep building and repeating it. And through that, you're building your brand, you're building consistency. You know, like I use metaphors. I travel all over the place, and often I'm at McDonald's because I know what's there. And imagine if I go to McDonald's and I order a Big Mac and like, oh, the cheese and pickles aren't on it. I go to a different McDonald's and it's like cheese and pickles there, but the meat's not there. So consistency is very important, and that's why McDonald's is very successful. That's why Starbucks is very successful, is you know what you're getting. And that's what you're trying to do through this, is be very consistent so that as you do a release, people kind of know what to expect and the level of quality. And if you deliver that, they're going to stay with you, and they're going to be your soldiers talking about you and sharing it and wanting other people to know about you. But if you're not consistent, then it's actually very detrimental. There used to be a time where a lot of industry went out to see shows in Toronto, and I don't see that happening anymore. And I know firsthand where I saw a band and I thought they were great. I invited some industry friends out. I'm like, you got to see this band. And they didn't play the songs that I heard. They didn't have the same image. And it was actually quite terrible. And in my industry rap friends are like, why did you ask us here? And so it's kind of like with hesitation, until we know there's a consistent level this band's going to deliver every time, we don't ask each other out to these shows. And because of that as well, we don't go out until we hear about a band. We don't go out until somebody really asks us. And so that's one thing that's tough. So this is building your brand, building your consistency, and it builds your audience, and you repeat. Now, we talked about, how to make the live show work. There's two sort of strategies that I use. One, and this is very important stuff. Hopefully you get it. There's a 12-month calendar. And out of those 12 months, there's a best time to release and the worst time to release. So I really highly recommend focus on the best times to release. And in between there, that's where you do the build up to it. Now, with that said, there's also the best time to tour and the worst time to tour. And a lot of artists, I find, plan their tours around almost like holidays. Like, I'm going to tour in the summer. I'm like, there's no students in schools, so you're losing that audience. And there's a lot of outdoor festivals, so you're losing that audience. In Toronto, especially, a lot of people go up to the Cottage, so you're losing that audience. There's a free street festival down the road, or Nathan Phillips Square or Yonge and Dundas has a free massive show, so you're losing that audience. And I'm like, why would you put yourself in a state where half your people or more are just not going to be there. So best time to do releases are in the spring and the fall. That's when you're going to maximize the most amount of people. I find in the summer months, it's the best time to write and record. December is best time to mix and master what you've recorded. January is the best time to plan. So it's almost like you start the year. January is the planning and booking of your tours, getting your photos, your assets all together. February, you start announcements. April 1st, March, you might release a song. April, you might release a song. End of April, you do a tour. April, May, tour. June, you start writing, recording your next stuff. July, writing and recording your next stuff. August, same as well. June, a little bit of tour, September, you do your next tour. Students are back in. So September, October, you tour. Possibly up to November, depending on how many shows you could do. December, you're mixing and mastering and fixing what you recorded, and then you just do the same thing every year. Like there's tour cycles. The summer is the best time to tour only if you're on festivals. That's the thing. Otherwise, it's best to prepare all your content. Now, as far as building your live audience at home, and this is, I've worked on this. I've worked on this with bands, and it's worked in Ireland, in UK, in Canada. It's working in Edmonton right now for a band that I talked about this. And my background partially is digital. I've done websites for companies and all that kind of stuff. And looking at online successful, like highly successful websites, I think of Facebook, I think of eBay, YouTube, Twitter, and all of those sites. If not one person uploaded anything, it would be empty. And this comes from, I saw a video with Tim Berners-Lee, and Tim Berners-Lee, he's the guy that built the World Wide Web as we know it. He said, the secret sauce is people add value. And I looked at working with bands that we could do all the tricks, we could do all the marketing and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, if there's nobody there to buy a ticket, to buy merch, to listen to your music, we're not getting to the next stage. So the focus should be on people. And I've done this with bands where you're able to do this without spending a cent, and it's organic, but it's a lot of work. So here's the secret. Everybody ready? This is the thing.
Drum roll.
Play and find in your hometown a home-based venue that you can sell out every single time. And that's your starting point. It could be 30 people. It could be 200 people. But don't play a show unless you can sell it out. So it's capacity crowd. And here's one thing that goes against what a lot of industry people say and bands say. Don't open for anybody. The second you open for somebody, you get zero credit and nobody cares, right? And I've had artists argue about this. And I go, cool, that's okay. Tell me who opened for Bon Jovi last year. No answer. Tell me who opened for Fleetwood Mac next year. No answer. It's hard to remember who opened for bands. So when you're developing, it's a fragile state. Every step you move could take you back 3 steps. So part of it is that consistency is if you find the best venue for you, you get the best sound, you get the best experience, the staff gets to know you, they're on your side. And if you can fill it every time, you will build momentum faster than playing half-filled shows or shows that have like 20 people. And your name's at the top. This is our show. We take full credit. You'd be amazed at what happens after 12 months of that. And I did that with a band from Saskatchewan. They moved to Toronto. They didn't know anybody. And the Bovine was the club that was best for them. And basically they played 3 shows, all at capacity crowds. And everybody was wanting to know who this band was. Within 8 months, they had a booking agent. And then they toured North America a few times. And when you do that, like a lot of artists ask, how do you get guarantees? How do you get sponsors? When you can prove you've got people, you can get sponsors and you can get guarantees. And here's the trick. put everybody on the guest list. And a lot of people will argue this about money, but here is the thing that we found. And it's a mathematical equation. You could put this into any capacity crowd. So what we did there, say Bovine's 200 capacity, we figured that the guest list had to be 3 times the capacity because only 30% people would show up. So we had to have 600 people on guest list. And to get 600 people, we actually had to ask 1,200 people. And that's all that they did. And if there's 5 people in the band and we said everybody works 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, that's 25 man hours. And you do that for 4 weeks, you're able to ask that amount of people. We did strategies like went to the Bovines group page on Facebook and started saying, hey, you like the Bovine, we're going to be there in 2 months. Here's a link, just let me know and I'll put you on guest list if you want. What we found is it's a lot more exciting to play in front of 200 people instead of 20 people. And when you put 200 people on a guest list, you get a higher percentage that actually buy your merch. And selling merch at $15, $20 is better than asking for $5 at the door. And when you do the door, usually you're splitting with other bands. When you're selling merch, you're not splitting with other bands. So by putting everybody on the guest list, that band was making about $700, $800 in merch sales every time they played. And for free, the marketing of them talking to people, the worst thing was 1,200 people knew who the band was that didn't know the band 4 weeks earlier or 6 weeks earlier.
Right.
And we did that for every show. And literally the very next year, we turned down 25 show offers of bands going, could you open or could you headline our CD release party? Or could you headline for us at Lee's Palace? And we turned them down because the band wasn't ready to jump from 200 to 450 capacity. And that venue will still be there in a year when they're ready. And there's nothing like changing your business plan for someone else. And I'm like, is this working so far? Yes. So why are we changing it? And the next step was find a band in the next home base, which was Montreal, who can sell out a show in Montreal, and just ask them, do you want a sold out show in Toronto? We'll do a switch. So to expand outward, we would just find bands that sold out in their territories and we'd do gig swaps. So going to Montreal, first show sold out and sold a lot of merch. So the thing is really concentrate just on people, retain them. You know, in between shows, the band was just emailing people that they'd invited to say like, hey, thanks for coming. And they built strong relationships that lasted. So that is what works literally every single time. And it builds momentum faster than you can think if you're the artist selling out. So, and then you'd go for guarantees and you go for sponsorships. And that's where you add money that you would have been making at the door.
Oh, bingo. Oh, this is awesome. Thanks for bearing with us, Darryl especially. Yeah, Greg's loving it. Thanks, Greg. Who also actually, Greg had a great question I wanted to get to.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll throw a couple here, but yeah, figuring out like the know your audience part of the strategy. You know, a few general tips here. First of all, when you're first building your audience, you're going to personally know a lot of them, and that might give you an idea as to who's making up your wider audience. You can also, of course, check out other bands in your scene, whether that's like your regional scene or who you sound like from a wider, you know, online environment. But in both of those cases, you know, if you kind of sound like Wu-Tang or Vampire Weekend, you've got a pretty good profile for what your audience looks like through what those bigger artists are doing. Other suggestions, Darryl?
Yeah, like, you know, it's interesting. Like one we kind of talked a little bit was the ads. By doing the big ad just to trying to get impressions and people, you take that data and you learn who your audience is, like who's actually interacting. Now, the one thing is I'm really a big advocate of like, yes, you got to do the digital, but you also have to do the real life stuff, like interact with people. So the band from Saskatchewan, what we did is we made sure that they actually hung out at the bar that they're going to be playing at twice a week, 3 times a week for 6 weeks leading up to them playing. and like they're not from here, but they were able to like they also did like 5,000 postcards that advertised the show, which is actually pretty cheap these days. And they would literally go, here's a postcard, that's my band, we're going to be here in 6 weeks. I know you come to the Bovine because we're standing in it. Could you come back in 6 weeks? Right. And what we found, if they went back there every week, the same people hung out. So the next week they would hand out a postcard to the same person. They go, oh, you gave this to me last week. 3 weeks in, they're like, yeah, you gave it to me. Okay, I'll go there. And then 4 weeks in, they're like, hey, John, how are you? And they're friends before the show.
Right.
So I find a lot of people just don't go out and interact with people like they used to. And it's actually a real easy thing to do. And they become friends, and then they become allies, and then they tell their friends, hey, I'm going to go check out this new band. Why don't you come? I can get guest list and things like that. By doing guest list, there's no barrier. Like, you're not asking them for money. You're not selling them a thing. You're just saying, hey, come to this show. It costs you nothing. And that's where they jump on board. If they like your music and like the performance, they'll support you much more than trying to get money out of them before they even know who you are.
Oh, that's awesome. And if I can toss in there just to ice that cake a bit, you need, it's a 200 cap room, you need 600 on your guest list, and you need to reach out to 1,200 for that. Like, we know, the term guest list has a wider definition. To folks on the outside, though, to that friend that met your band at the bar and then might tell someone, hey, come to this show, I'm on guest list. To the majority of people in the public, that comes with some exclusivity and prestige, and can actually, I think, kind of feed into your goal here. So kudos to that. I've never even thought of that.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? Part of the wording can be really important too. So what we would like, you always have to have a cover charge so that there's value to it. Otherwise,
Right.
Free is free. And what you could do is, hey, I'll have 2 tickets at the door for you. So it's not necessarily sometimes a guest list. It's like, I've got tickets for you. So it's an even higher value, I found, when you say it that way.
Bingo. Oh, this is awesome. Thank you so much to Darryl and to everybody else. Some very great questions, some very nice compliments. Thank you very much. You can check out a recording of this session and all of our previous webinars. We've got a few dozen up now. nwcwebinars.com is the home base. We'll be back in January with Steve Waxman, formerly of Warner Music Group Canada. He's kind of a kingmaker with careers, and we're going to be talking about defining your narrative, which, well, now that I think about it, the question about knowing your audience kind of goes hand in hand with knowing and relaying who you are. So join us for that, nwcwebinars.com. Darryl, thanks a ton. Where can people find you? Anything you want to let people know about before we go?
Yeah, well, basically, Darryl Hurs, you can just Google it on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Also, we just started, we're going to be building out our CD Baby Canada Instagram. So if everybody could do me a favor, just go to Instagram and follow CD Baby Canada. We're going to be doing more talks. A big initiative is education. So I love doing these kinds of things. I'm actually going to be in Manitoba talking in January, Halifax and New Brunswick coming up in April, I believe. And then the other thing I said, for everybody who's stuck around, I've got a promo code for a single release on CD Baby. We just had Indie Week, and so we've got a promo code right now, Indie Week 2019, no spaces. If you just want to try the platform, it's a pro release as well, so you get all your royalty collection. But if you just want to try the platform, putting up a single, it's free.